Hello, family and friends. Here I am again. This is Lee Holden, and this is another segment of Real Talk in Minutes. The subject today is what is the purpose of the tithe? Um, why are we called the tithe? Tithing? Why? Well, let's talk about that. Just to let you know, the what is stirred in my heart to make me talk about this particular subject. It was on my mind before, and I had already started taking notes, but I read a post about a church in Georgia that kicked a woman, a 92-year-old woman by the name of Josephine King, out of the church because she didn't give enough money, and that was like just pushed me to have this segment. And I think what's happening is that either people are forgetting the the purpose of the tithe, and or they just don't understand the purpose of the tithe. So here we are. So this is all about God. So I'm going to start with His word in Leviticus 27-30. I'll read that to you. It says, "A tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the tree, belongs to the Lord. It is holy to the Lord." Now, the Bible was written a while back, so if we bring that into today, that means that money falls right there with land and grain, okay, and animals and everything else. So basically, 10% of our income. And just for the record, the word tithe, because a lot of people's like, well, where do you get this 10% from? The word tithe means tenth, 10% of something. So it's 10% of our first income, and it means the first tenth at that. So it's not the last tenth; it's the first tenth. So I just want to keep this real. But I also want to point out that God does not need my money, your money, anybody else's money. He created it all. And I'm a strong believer, and I know everybody here is a strong believer of this book. So understand, He created it all, and He doesn't need the money. But what He does need in the world of free will, He needs for you to make the choice to give your heart to Him. And tithing is a type of indicator of where your heart is. So let me go into that for a minute. I did not always tithe. So let me just put myself out there. Actually, I've been tithing faithfully every Sunday, going on 2 years. Regardless of what I'm going through, regardless of oh man, woo, I don't know what we gonna do. That extra $50 or $100 would sure. Regardless of all of that, God gets the first tenth. Period. And I share and teach this to my family as well. So what I've learned is that I used to tithe a little bit before, and sometimes not the 10%. And by the way, don't take this out of content. You can always give more, but at least give 10. What I recognize through a lot of self-study and mentorship is that if I don't want to give 10%, it's because I want something else. And it clearly states that God gets His 10, but I want this. Either I want to buy something, go somewhere, but God, your request for 10% is really getting in the way of what I want. And what happens is I put myself before God, and God is, per His word that we agree that we believe on, and He comes first before everything, ourselves, our spouses, our kids, everything. And then we have to, focus on Proverbs 3:5-6. In my own understanding, God, hey, we're going to work this out because this ain't making sense at this moment. But at the same token, it says trust in the Lord. Trust in the Lord. So this is a test of trust. For one, it's also a test of selfishness because a lot of times it might not be bills. I wanted to buy my beautiful wife something one time, and I was in church with the tithe in my pocket, and I talked myself out of tithing. Um, we were going. It was getting close to Christmas one time with some gifts I had to get. Now I could have waited. Not only could I have waited for the next check, so I was impatient, but then I talked myself out of it. So I had issues at one time when it came to tithing because it just didn't make sense. But let's break it down. What was really going on in me? I wasn't trusting God, and I had to mature spiritually to a point to recognize it, and then I had to make the commitment to walk with Him and trust Him. So tithing is something that's really important because it shows where your heart is. Is your heart focused more on something else other than God? Is it focused on you more than God? Point is it selfishness? And selfishness is not a character that gets us or a key that gets us into heaven. So just keep that in mind. Now, I know I've heard some people say, oh, well, you don't hear about tithing in the New Testament. Well, let's talk about that because Luke 11, 37, 42, not only do you hear, comes from Jesus. He was invited to a Jewish home. He didn't exactly follow all the Jewish customs, and they were a little disturbed by that. And he was basically saying, why are you disturbed by that? You're so clean and everything on the outside, but your inside, your heart is filthy. So he went on to say, hold on right here. What sorrow awaits you, Pharisees, for you are careful to tithe. We already know tithe means 10%. Your income and your herbs, but you ignore the justice and the love of God. You should tithe, is what Jesus said. Yes, but do not neglect the more important things. So it's all about following God, being obedient to God, point blank. Tithing doesn't trump that. But we are commanded to do it. And it's to test our hearts. Malachi 3:10, I mean, it kind of really sums it up. It says, bring all your tithes into the storehouse so there will be enough food in my temple. If you do, say the Lord of heaven's armies, I will open the window of heaven for you. I will pour out a blessing so great you won't even have enough room to take it in. And as I was taught, and I'm also reading from the Word, God, the only place in the Bible that God points out, He says, try it. Put me to the test. This is the only area, tithing is the only area where God says, put Him through the test. So, is tithing really what God wants us to do? Well, from the old to the new, the answer is yes. Now, can people take advantage of the tithes? Can churches take advantage of the tithes? I know my church is doing wonderful things and supporting missions and so forth, and I'm all for that. I'm not saying that every church out there is making the right decision when it comes to finances, but when it comes to tithing, God asked you to do it. And if someone misuses that, that's on them. If you feel someone's misusing that, maybe you need, out of all due respect, maybe you just need to find a different church where the tithe is being used properly. But it's not a reason not to tithe because the church might be asking you, but God commanded it. And being in line with Christ, you can't do just some of the things. I know we're not perfect, but the simple things like that, the only thing that gets in the way is either confusion brought up from the seed of the devil, because he likes to confuse us and make us second guess things that we know in our heart is right, or just straight selfishness. Selfishness will make us not want to do it too. So, and if we're really committed, wholeheartedly in following God. And we want to take these steps, and tithing is one of them, to show our obedience and trust Him. So I hope this message was good for somebody out there. I appreciate your time, and have a great week, and may God bless.